And we have printed materials as well that we send to students and their parents before they go. But I think one of the reasons Amerispan has been so successful for the last 20 years is exactly that fact. You're talking to real people, people that have studied and traveled extensively all over the world, people that have dealt with problems that any student is going to deal with, whether we've dealt with it ourselves or whether we've had to deal with it through one of our participants. So with that 20 years of knowledge and 35,000 people we've sent abroad, we really do know how to handle almost every situation. So we're always here, and it's not once you sign up for one of our programs, we send you abroad and we forget about you. It's from when you're trying to decide where to go, we work with you. When you're trying to prepare your child before they go abroad, we work with you. While they're abroad, if there's any problems, we're there. And then afterwards, we want to hear about how we did and what we can do better for the next child that goes abroad.
Right. Do you get many repeat children that go once with you and then maybe the family goes another time or the child wants to go again?
We do. We see a lot of that time after time, brother, sister, sister, or cousin, something like that is gone, and then they get their family involved. Being based in Philadelphia, we have several local area high schools and private schools that send their teens year after year. So if it's maybe not a direct student from that school that we see students returning.
Right. Well, that's a great recommendation for your program, that people come back to go again.
And it can start from the teen program. They can do that, and then they can kind of graduate on to our college study abroad programs. And then when they get out of college, they can go on to our professional programs. So really, we can see someone from a teen all the way through, even into their adult life, a language immersion experience.
Cradle to the grave. Cradle to the grave. That's what we're offering.
Let's get, kind of a nitty-gritty thing. Let's just role play. A child is overseas, has an issue. Maybe he or she broke one of your rules or guidelines, or maybe there's an interpersonal problem between two students or someone in the family. How is that handled when they're overseas? How do you navigate that?
Well, I think we'll start off first with one of the main issues that we encounter year after year really has to do with homesickness. That's one of the biggest, and it usually occurs in the first week. Cultural adjustment tends to be a little bit more difficult for some of the younger participants. They're less experienced travelers. They're kind of at that awkward age or are unrealistic about the expectations. So we usually encourage the parent to have the child stick it out for 1 week. And, of course, if they don't like it after that, we'll do everything we can to kind of help facilitate the family of bringing them home as quickly as possible.
How do you find out about that? I mean, what's the usual, if the child, will the host family contact you or the child calls home? How does that?
It's almost twofold. We generally hear it from the parent themselves because their child has called them, crying or upset or says, "Get me home now," or something like that. So the parent is usually following up with us first, but the next is the on-site staff. I mean, they see them day to day, and if the child has come to them, they follow up with us as well.
And even if the child doesn't, we generally have a low faculty-to-student ratio at most of our programs. The exception might be some of the Spanish camps over in Spain where there's quite a few students per each faculty advisor, but in general, they have a pretty good feel. Just like at any camp, the counselor knows if this child's having a problem. So they'll contact us, and they know that you want to correct something like this as soon as possible because you don't want to have any problems. And if a child's upset, we don't want to force them to stay abroad. So we'll work to facilitate to try and get them home as soon as possible. Make sure they're escorted to the airport, whatever.
Yeah, and what about your training of the people overseas in terms of how much do you guys do the training or supervise and evaluate your program directors overseas, et cetera?
It varies. We don't hire the people directly, and we don't train them directly. However, as one of the leading organizations that send students abroad, we kind of dictate the way the programs are in many of these locations, or they've developed these programs based on our criteria. So with our on-site visits and with past participants, we have a pretty good reading of what the pulse is of the program, where there's problems, where there aren't problems, what can be improved, or what's running along smoothly. And then we also are affiliated with an organization over in Spain that we're almost a sister organization with them, and they do the hiring for most of our programs in Spain. So we talk directly to the president of that company if there's any issues.
Right.
And we get the things resolved.
Mm.
How can people find you?
Well, they can listen to your radio show. No, they can go to our website, which is www.amerispan.com. That's A, M as in Michael, E-R-I, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, A-N as in Nancy.com. Or they can call our 800 number, 800-879-6640. Or if they do a search for study abroad or high school study abroad, we're generally, one of the second, third, fourth, fifth people listed on Google. So
Terrific.
We're pretty easy to find.
Terrific.
That's great. And we will have a link to your site on our site for the radio show, so people that do listen to this can easily click on that and then get more information about you. We really thank you. We appreciate the information. And as we said at the beginning, this is a topic near and dear to us, knowing how beneficial it was for our children to spend some time overseas. So we do hope many families will take advantage of the service that you can provide.
And I'll leave you with a disclosure. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer, and I spent 2 years in Brazil right after college, and I know how much that shaped my life in having that overseas experience. So I'm a real proponent.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
You're listening to webtalkradio.net, Growing Great Families with Dr. Richard and Jane Horowitz. So are there any themes that John and Beth mentioned that we might want to expand on?
Yes, certainly. Beyond the obvious benefits for a teen of this kind of experience, I was particularly struck with the idea of the study and immersion being a family effort.
Mm.
And they indicated that there are programs where families would absolutely travel together and all participate. And that's so in sync, family-centered parenting. It's consistent with our mission in that the family would do things as a unit and learn things together and maybe care for others together. Also, it's great modeling because if mom and dad are also studying Spanish at the same time their teen is, and they're doing homework together and they're practicing together, it's a great model. You're teaching your children about lifelong learning, how important it is. You do homework together. So I just was really intrigued. I mean, again, I loved a lot of their programs, but I was particularly intrigued by the possibility of it being a family experience in addition to their other offerings where the teen would go alone, which is great, but that just struck me as really something significant.
Yeah, that is quite different. I know of other study abroad experiences for students, but this is the first that we've talked about having the family go together to do that. We talked somewhat about the safety concerns that I brought up, but are there any other concerns that we might want to talk about?
Well, not about the program itself. That I think, I really have no concerns. And you're right, the safety concerns that we raised and how they screen and prepare the kids and the information that's provided to families prior to going overseas seems great. So I think all of those questions were certainly answered. My only concern really is indirectly is families who don't have, frankly, the financial means to have this kind of experience because, let's face it, it is a considerable outlay to be able to send your teen to study abroad over the summer in an immersion program with a family to travel. And I wonder how you can create experiences that are similar to studying abroad when you don't have the financial means to send your children. Do you have any ideas what a family can do?
Well, just thinking about the financial end of it, I do know there are some community organizations that sometimes select a student for a scholarship to go and study abroad. So families that are really interested in that might look into their community organizations, and they might get some financial assistance that way. We didn't talk with John and Beth about this, but they might also have some suggestions on where families might be able to get some financial assistance. So again, if they go on their website or contact them, they just might have some more information.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know Rotary clubs often are a good source, and there are other local groups that do when a teen presents a program. So that's a great suggestion.
But if a family doesn't want to go to that extent or can't for whatever reason, I guess there's other ways that you can have kind of an out of your comfort zone or out of your normal community experience. And we just talked the show last week about caring for others and ways to experience things that you can learn about other people's culture and learn how to think about others and what they need instead of just, yourself and your local family. Maybe taking a class together as a family or with a sibling and learning a language together. I know in high school, of course, there are language classes, but maybe doing it with the whole family would bring that aspect into it as well.
Yeah, they can even do, there's so many good computer programs today, even as a family together, they can be learning on one of the language programs and then practice together, et cetera, and make it a family experience just as a goal for the family. Let's all see if we can learn a new language together. So that might be something. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and those computer programs are relatively inexpensive compared to traveling that far. Another thing is, I don't know, the family just learn their family history, where they came from, what their family history, the country of origin was for that family, and learn more about the past, what that country was like when their grandparents, great-grandparents were there, and what it's like today and what's changed.
Yeah, those are all great ideas. Let me think. Do you have a story or some stories about your children and experiences abroad?
Yeah, quite a few, as a matter of fact, and I'm not quite sure which ones to relate. All three of my children have been overseas. One went in a sports competition. One went actually with her brother to India to volunteer in an orphanage. And my son has been, I think, probably at this point in his life, almost overseas more than he's been in the States. He started going when he was after the end of 8th grade and just continued. But all of them, the experience that they got when they were over there really opened their eyes to what they have here in this country that other people don't have. And it also helped them on their resume. We talked before about building your resume for college, and both John and Beth mentioned that as well. So it really helped round out their resume and made them stand out a little bit more than the typical student.
Absolutely.
How about you?
Well, actually, my story is really personal more than my own children, because I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and that I did right after college. I was 21 years old. I had grown up just in one area, so I didn't have a broad experience other than urban life. And the idea of going overseas and spending 2 years overseas, learning a new language, the total immersion that Beth and John talked about in the language experience, and I went through that learning Portuguese. And it's such a huge impact on my whole life after that time. I remember that time with such intense memories and experiences and how it shaped my whole view of the world. And the idea of having that experience at a relatively young age and living in another culture, and again, as you said, appreciating our own country and what we have, it really was life-changing to me, and I wouldn't trade that for anyone. So my personal overseas experience certainly reinforces my feeling that this is a great thing for young people, and since today it's a lot easier to make it happen, I think whatever parents could do to make it happen, it's huge for their children.
Well, thank you for joining us. We hope this maybe has intrigued you a little bit, that you might look into some opportunities for your family outside of your local community, and maybe even make it over the pond to enjoy something overseas. Bye now.
Bye now, and keep your family strong.
Thank you for joining us this week. To learn more about Dr. Horowitz, Jane, and growing great relationships, please click on the host website icon on the webtalkradio.net page. You can also click on Dr. Horowitz's book cover, Family-Centered Parenting. And if you missed any shows, please just click Archive Shows. Hope to see you right here again next time for another edition of Growing Great Families.